Hi, welcome back. My name is Nick Muller and thank you for tuning into my video. In this training, we're going to go through in a lot more detail some of the components required to successfully transition responsibility across and exit your business. Okay, so here we have a mind map which goes into a bit more detail that we'll be going into in terms of the modules in the Transitioning Responsibility Masterclass 10-week course. Okay, so first of all, just to give you a high-level view, this is the mind map that I've created to outline most of the components that we need to establish to sell a business successfully. Now, when we sell a business under duress, the opportunity to go through a lot of this stuff doesn't happen, right? So we're selling in reaction, or we're transitioning out in reaction, and when that happens, it's just too late, okay? We just don't get to the detail. We don't get all these components answered and resolved. So first of all, I'll just start here top left. Purchaser and seller objectives. We need to actually match the purchaser and the seller's objectives. Okay, so when we get that right, we end up with a valuable price, a high price, that value that we're after. When we don't get it right, we end up having to compromise and we end up getting chipped away at in terms of our price. Okay, so preparation. First of all, some of the things we have to think about are time frame for the purchase start point and time frame for the purchase end point. This is if we're trying to sell. Okay, so often we need to look at different kinds of potential buyers. They may be current team member, future team member, family member, likely purchaser, investor purchaser, or they might be a strategic purchaser, which is an industry player. Okay, so we need to establish who will the likely future shareholder be. And that's going to make a lot of difference in terms of a lot of the downstream decisions that we make. What will the likely shareholder split look like? And if it's internal, we need to look at whether that's going to have an impact on motivation versus control. Okay, so the other thing is that once we become a minority shareholder, we need to put into place mechanisms to make sure that dividends carry on getting paid in our absence. We don't get voted against and things like that. How will the transaction be funded? And what percentage split will the founder retain? And again, there's a company constitution to agree on dividend policy. So I won't go into too much of the legal side of it, but high level, these are the decisions we need to make. Okay, qualifying our buyer. Will the purchaser be an owner operator? Can the person, if that's the case, can this person see themselves owning the business? So if the business is owner dependent, then, and it's a vocation type of business where, like an electrical company for argument's sake, does the person need to be an electrician, or can they be a general manager or a CEO from a different industry? These are things to think about. Can they afford a partial share, partial cash payment, or payment in full? And there are a myriad of ways you can construct this. Purchasers that borrow are unlikely to pay a higher price. Will they be borrowing? Would an operational role conflict with a shareholder position? And so we need to define the future org chart. And what kind of arrangement could they afford to buy into? Alright, so just moving on to maximizing the sale value. So in order to get a value or a price that we consider healthy, or what we're after, we actually need to make sure that there's value in it. Okay, so you can't have one without the other, or you'll end up at the negotiating table losing. Revenue stream dependence on high value customers needs to be reduced. So if we've got a signature client that's more than 50% or even 20% or 30% of our revenue, then that can be quite a high risk for the potential purchaser. We need to reduce supplier dependence, bring in a purchasing officer, have processes in place, to support buying product, reduce owner dependence. So 3 to 5 times multiple is only achievable if the business is no longer reliant on the owner. Okay, so anybody that tells you that that's achievable, and you, while you need to be purchased by an industry player, is going to be difficult unless you've got something that the industry player can leverage, some an untapped market, untapped processes, or some brands, for argument's sake, that can be leveraged by a competitor. Then they'll potentially see you as appealing to buy, attractive value proposition. Can't be personnel dependent on key people. And there are ways to incentivize people to stay 3 to 6 months, 12 months after the purchase has happened, and future upside needs to be established. So not just a hypothetical idea, having a foothold or some process in place to allow yourself to get into new untapped markets is going to support increasing the value of the business in a sale transaction. Alright, so strategy, I'm not going to go into too much detail around this, but going through this process will take 3 to 6 months, and the purpose of it is to onboard your team. Okay, once the team's on board and the direction's been clearly established, and it's going to lead you into uncontested market space or a niche that you can dominate or occupy relatively securely, then your business value, intrinsic value, is going to increase, or you've got a defendable position. Okay, and we need to make the plan visible. We need to set recurring frequency to make sure that projects get executed. Okay, so one of the big things that happens when we do strategic planning is that we have a nice day out, and or we take some time out aside, we do the plan, and then nothing gets executed, right? And it can be hugely frustrating and demoralizing for the business owner that's got a 3 to 5 year transition out plan. Okay, so because none of this stuff can happen if this stuff's not happening. Okay, and then last of all, the actual transition itself. So, like I say, a business that's good to sell is good to own. Okay, and the point of this is that if we transition out or transition across successfully some of these key components, then we find that we may not want to sell the business. We might be able to just sell down part of the business and keep an ongoing recurring revenue stream from it. But in order for that to happen, we need to be able to successfully transition these components: customer relationships, supplier relationships, and product selection process. Internal processes, they generally okay, but we need to streamline. Org structure, we do a before purchase and an after transition out, or before transition out, after transition out org structure, and look at the two, and they might be completely different. We may not have people for the roles that we want to fill. We may want people to be off the bus, and there may be roles that just won't exist in the future. There's all sorts of things that we need to take into consideration, and when we do that, then we can actually create a pathway and a map to go from point A to point B. Operational KPIs, including meeting frequency. This is about creating peer accountability and create dashboards, highlight key metrics. So these two components here go together quite well. And then radical transparency and radical candor. So we need to start introducing accountability into the business, and quite often there's a bit of bloodshed when we start to do this, because not everybody likes accountability, in case you didn't notice. Alright, that's it for this training. Hope that's been valuable to you, useful, and I look forward to talking with you soon. Cheers.